The $500 billion lie. How Big Pharma keeps you sick and poor. The pharmacist whispers, that'll be $642, and the mom stares at the insulin like it's a lottery ticket she can't cash. The clock ticks. She does the math, rent or medicine. Somewhere an executive's bonus depends on her hesitation. This isn't a mistake, it's a $500 billion business model. CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx sit between her and that receipt. The discount you've heard about, she won't see it. Tonight, we crack the playbook, name the gatekeepers, and follow the first dollar. The fix exists, and someone profits if you never find it. Set up how a lie becomes healthcare. To understand why a life-saving drug becomes a monthly ransom, we rewind to the moment a molecule meets a lawyer. A patent turns discovery into a temporary monopoly. That's normal. What happens next is the launch price becomes a lighthouse number, never meant to come down, then climbs every January. Meet the cast. Manufacturers set the list price. Pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs like CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx decide which drugs get favored spots on your plan's formulary. Insurers, often the PBMs, parent companies like CVS Health, Cigna, and United Health Group, buy those networks and rules, then pass costs to employers and families. Pharmacies dispense and fight for pennies. Regulators try to police the parade, while lobbyists drive the floats. Here's the core question. Why do prices rise after launch even when sales explode and R&D is long paid off? On paper, competition should push prices down. In practice, the system pays more when the sticker price goes up, because the bigger the list price, the bigger the rebate PBMs can extract to win placement. Those rebates rarely reach you at the counter. You pay off the list. The middlemen feast on the spread. Two price tags define the game. The list price, the scary number on your receipt. The net price, the quiet number after backroom discounts. The distance between them is where the lie lives. Employers see premiums swell. Patients see deductibles reset. Drug makers see market share move when they sweeten the rebate. PBMs see revenue rise when they demand more sweetener. Three more forces lock it in. First, exclusivity. Patents, FDA-granted protections, and dense thickets of secondary claims delay rivals. Second, formularies. Step therapy, prior authorization, and exclusion lists steer patients toward preferred options that pay the richest rebates. Third, vertical integration. When PBMs, insurers, and specialty pharmacies share a parent, the house writes rules and cashes chips at every table. Meanwhile, January becomes the fiscal new year. Price hikes land when deductibles reset, so families feel the full brunt. Manufacturers insist net prices are flat. Patients don't buy net. They buy survival, one swipe at a time. Remember the gatekeepers. CVS Caremark can bless a brand and ban its rival in the same memo. Express Scripts can make a cheaper biosimilar wait behind a preferred originator. OptumRx can route your refill through a specialty pharmacy it owns, then collect performance fees on adherence it measures itself. To follow the money, start with the pill's first dollar and watch every hand grab for it before you ever reach the counter. The $1 pill that costs $300. Start at the register. A vial of insulin rings up at $312. The pharmacist shrugs. Your deductible. The label says Eli Lilly. The plan behind the scenes buys that same vial for far less after rebates. Why does the family pay the higher number while everyone else trades on the lower one? Because list price and net price live on different planets, and your coinsurance rides the list. Here's how the spread gets engineered. January hits. Manufacturers lift list prices 5, 10, sometimes 15%. CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx tell them you want top-tier placement, sweeten the rebate. The manufacturer raises the list to afford the bigger discount. The PBM books the rebate and favors the drug. Your receipt still shows the list. Coinsurance and deductibles calculate off that headline. Employers set next year's premiums off that headline. The net price, the quiet, negotiated number, stays hidden in contracts. A diabetic teenager feels this in days, not spreadsheets. She's 17, a varsity midfielder. Her mom rations pens the last week of January because the deductible reset on the 3rd. I can stretch, the teen says, dialing down a dose before practice. 2 days later, she wakes up in urgent care with an IV and a lecture about ketones. The nurse hands them a manufacturer coupon. It knocks $40 off. The bill still hurts. The coach texts, "Take your time," like time changes the math. Formularies are the traffic cops. Tier 1 is friendly. Tier 3 punishes. Tier 4 feels like a ticket. Step therapy says fail the older drug first. Prior authorization dares your doctor to drown in forms. CVS Caremark publishes an exclusion list. Express Scripts mirrors it with different codes. OptumRx adds clinical edits. On paper, these keep waste down. In practice, they steer toward preferred brands that paid the richest rebate. Then come rebate walls. A blockbuster buys preferred status by offering a fat check. The contract can penalize the PBM and plan if a rival gets added. A cheaper competitor arrives, the wall makes switching financially painful, even if patients would save. A rheumatologist in Ohio writes a biosimilar 20% cheaper. The denial lands before the patient reaches the parking lot. Plan prefers reference product. The brand is approved in minutes. The cheaper option sits behind weeks of appeals. Vertical integration tightens the loop. CVS Health owns Caremark and CVS Specialty. Cigna owns Express Scripts and Accredo. United Health Group owns OptumRx and Optum Specialty. The formulary points to a pharmacy they own. Adherence performance fees flow to a subsidiary. Mail order lives in-house. They can collect a spread by billing a plan more than they reimburse a dispensing pharmacy, then book separate admin and data fees that scale with list price. They'll tell you they return 100% of negotiated rebates. Rebates are only part of the river. The pharmacy owner sees the river from the wrong bank. He runs an independent on the edge of town, 50 years in business, brown bottles on oak shelves. One Tuesday, he fills a generic blood pressure med for $14.72 his cost. OptumRx reimburses $13.98. He loses 74 cents and prays the flu shots make up the margin. 3 months later, a DIR fee clawback hits for performance. It wipes out last quarter's profit. On Friday, he posts a sign, closed early for inventory. On Monday, a for lease notice faces the street. His patients get a letter steering them to mail order. Oncology is where the math turns cruel. One infusion can cost more than a car. Coinsurance at 20% on a $14,000 cycle is $2,800 per visit. Express Scripts flags non-adherence if a refill slips. CVS Specialty calls to support adherence while collecting fees. Optum's portal shows on track. A social worker scrambles for a grant from a foundation that opens at 9:02 and is empty at 9:19. The patient brings a credit card to the infusion suite and hopes the MAG stripe clears. Manufacturers say, our net price is flat. It can be true. Patients don't pay net. They pay off the top line until deductibles are met, and many never get there. Employers don't see net either. They see premiums set by actuaries who can't model confidential deals. The spread between list and net funds rebate guarantees PBMs promise in pitch decks. $600 per member per year in savings. Savings where? Often upstream, not at the counter. Coupons look like rescue. Copay cards drop a $150 bill to $10. Then an accumulator blocks that $140 from counting toward the deductible. Maximizers tune your monthly payment to drain the manufacturer's assistance across the year while total spend stays high. You feel better in March. Your premiums rise in December. So who controls affordability? The hand on the valve is the PBM with the formulary pen. CVS Caremark can bless a brand and ban its rival. Express Scripts can keep a biosimilar on the bench behind preferred originators. OptumRx can route you to its own specialty pharmacy, measure your adherence, and bill a fee for improving the thing it measured. None of that is visible at the counter. You meet a keypad and a choice you shouldn't have to make. The receipt tells a story in numbers. The fine print is the part you were never meant to read. The middleman maze, PBMs. While that family is rationing insulin, a different scene unfolds in a glass-walled boardroom. A benefits director slides a stack of claims reports across the table. The PBM rep from CVS Caremark smiles and says, we can guarantee $700 per member per year in savings. Express Scripts promises market-leading exclusions. OptumRx offers total cost of care optimization. The numbers sound neat. The footnotes decide your bill. Formularies are their map. Preferred means low copay and instant approval. Non-preferred means higher out-of-pocket delays and a dare to appeal. An exclusion list is a locked door. PBMs argue these levers control waste. They do. They also control who gets volume and who pays to earn it. On the whiteboard, a drug's fate reduces to tiers, edits, and the size of the rebate check attached to it. Spread pricing is the quiet toll. A plan gets billed $42 for a generic. The pharmacy gets reimbursed $34. The PBM keeps the $8 spread. Multiply that across millions of fills. Employers see aggregate savings slides. Pharmacies see red ink. When states force pass-through contracts, those spreads shrink. Where they don't, the river runs. Then come rebate walls, the fences you can't see. A brand buys preferred status with a rebate so rich the contract punishes the plan if it adds a rival. A cheaper competitor appears. The wall makes switching financially painful this plan year. Physicians here not covered. Patients here try something else. The message to the newcomer is simple. Out-rebate the incumbent or watch your launch stall. Microstory, Dr. Patel, a rheumatologist in Columbus, writes a biosimilar that's 20% cheaper. The denial arrives before the patient reaches the elevator. Plan prefers originator. Step therapy applies. Weeks of faxes, chart notes, and peer-to-peers crawl by. By the time approval lands, the patient's flare has already forced a steroid taper and a missed month of work. At refill, the plan restarts the dance because a new quarter began. Prior authorization turns care into a queue. A nurse spends an hour in an OptumRx portal uploading labs. A case toggles from pending to insufficient data. Another nurse tries the Express Scripts line and gets a recorded message about higher than normal call volume. Meanwhile, the patient texts, "Should I stop the old med?" Precision medicine becomes persuasion medicine. Convince the gatekeeper you fit. Vertical integration makes the maze a company town. CVS Health owns Caremark and CVS Specialty. Cigna owns Express Scripts and Accredo. United Health Group owns OptumRx and Optum Specialty. The formulary directs volume to a pharmacy the parent owns. The prior auth software is licensed by a sibling. Adherence, performance, fees are measured and billed inside the same house. When an independent pharmacy complains reimbursement sits below acquisition cost, the appeal goes to a mailbox upstairs. PBMs insist they return 100% of rebates to plans. Sometimes they do, but revenue doesn't stop at rebates. Admin fees, data fees, network access fees, clinical management fees, many scale with the list price. When list prices rise, those fee lines rise with them. It's one reason a PBM can brag about rebate pass-through while still delivering strong margins. The discount river has tributaries. Non-medical switching is the season change patients don't control. December, stable on drug A. January, a letter beginning next plan year, drug B is preferred. Same class, clinically equivalent, better rebate. The clinic appeals and wins for 90 days. In April, the pharmacy gets an alert. Please consider our preferred alternative. The patient gets a new bottle and a new side effect. Coupons look like lifelines. Accumulators and maximizers rewire the rescue. A manufacturer card drops a $160 copay to $10 at the CVS Caremark counter. The accumulator records that $150 as assistance that won't count toward your deductible. With maximizers, OptumRx calibrates your monthly copay to drain the full value of the card across the year. Your out-of-pocket smooths. Total spend doesn't. Employers wonder why pharmacy costs rise when members paid less. Microstory, Maria runs an independent on Main Street. A dad arrives with 2 asthma inhalers. She sources them for $282. Express Scripts reimburses $268. She loses $14 before the lights, the text paycheck, and the bag. 3 months later, a retroactive DIR fee claws back another $90 for adherence performance. The metric was measured by the PBM's own specialty arm. Maria closes on Thursdays now. Her voicemail begging regulars to shift maintenance meds to 90-day fills so she can survive. Data is the PBM's leverage and shield. They see which prescribers resist switches, which clinics approve prior auths fastest, which drugs trend on social. A brand team visits with a payer dossier tuned to the PBM's metrics. Fewer hospital days, lower ER visits, modeled savings over 12 months. The rebate stacks accordingly. If the dossier convinces, the gate opens. If not, the brand sweetens the check. Employers try to pry the black box. Some hire auditors to chase spreads and clawbacks. Some move to pass-through contracts with acquisition cost plus pharmacy pay. Some carve out specialty entirely. They get cleaner math, fewer surprises, and plenty of threats. Members will lose access. Networks will shrink. Savings aren't guaranteed. The employers who stick it out publish results. The ones who don't end up back at the same table, hearing the same pitch with a fresh guarantee. Here's the part patients never see. Mid-year, a PBM can run a formulary optimization, a euphemism for swapping winners and losers. One memo and a CSV upload later, thousands of people meet a new prior auth, a new copay, a new coupon hunt. Market share shifts on Tuesday. Wednesday's press release celebrates affordability. The maze works because its rules live in contracts you don't read and software you don't access. By the time a price hits your receipt, the game ended months ago in rooms where a bigger list price buys a bigger rebate, and a bigger rebate buys the tier your doctor has to click. Chapter 3, Launch High, Hike Higher. Across town from that PBM pitch, a launch team is rehearsing a number they've already decided won't go down. It's the Lighthouse Price. Once it's lit, everything else orbits it. Rebates, value decks, investor calls, even what CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx expect at the negotiating table. The first number does two jobs at once. It's the ceiling patients slam into at the counter and the floor for every value justification after. There's no national reference pricing to pull it back. So the company builds a story: fewer hospitalizations, more workdays saved, caregivers' time quantified. The slide with the dollar sign lands like a verdict. From there, the Lighthouse becomes tradition. Industry standard increases every January that no one intends to reverse. The protections lock in early. Orphan designation brings tax credits, fee waivers, and 7 years where rivals sit out. Accelerated approval gets the drug to market on a surrogate endpoint, tumor shrinkage, a lab value, while confirmatory trials trail behind. Patents stack: the molecule, the formulation, the device, the manufacturing steps. By the time the first claims clock runs low, a thicket of secondaries stands ready to argue non-obvious improvement. Micro Story, a rare disease infusion debuts at $325,000 a year. Transformative, the press release says. PBMs negotiate access with heavy rebates. Plans add prior auth. Year 1, a dozen patients qualify. Year 2, diagnostic criteria broaden as awareness grows. By year 3, the price is $410,000. The company says evolving value. The plan says coinsurance. The family says we refinance the house. Hospitals feel the tremor before headlines do. Pharmacy directors juggle oncology, neurology, immunology, each line item swelling against a fixed budget. Add the new drug and surgical supplies get squeezed. Leave it off and transfers spike. Every committee vote is a trade between today's bed capacity and tomorrow's outcome. Manufacturers defend altitude with two shields. One is risk, a graveyard of failed compounds, billions spent, years lost. The other is outcomes contracting. We'll take a haircut if it doesn't work. On paper, that ties price to performance. In practice, defining works takes data plumbing most plans don't have, and the terms live behind NDAs. Patients still pay coinsurance off list while actuaries wrangle denominators. What nobody says out loud is that high launch protects against the financial fallout of market unpredictability, allowing manufacturers to recoup investments while navigating the complex web of healthcare economics. Public risk, private reward. To see who really bankrolls innovation, leave the hotel ballroom and walk into a fluorescent lit lab at a public university. A grad student pipettes at midnight. Her stipend comes from an NIH R01, taxpayer dollars, approved by a study section that read her PIE's grant like triage notes. This is the slow part of science, mapping receptors, debugging vectors, proving a target even matters. It's failure stacked on failure until one mouse lived. Micro Story, at UNC, a postdoc spends 3 years calming an immune response to a viral vector. Most trials flop. One Friday, a tiny cohort doesn't crash. The lab high-fives, drafts a paper, and emails tech transfer. By Tuesday, there's a provisional patent with the university named as owner and the inventors listed for a cut if it's ever licensed. A startup spun out of the same department asks for an exclusive. The price gets hashed out over coffee and a spreadsheet of comparables. This is where Bayh-Dole enters, the 1980 law that let universities own inventions made with federal money so they could license them. It worked. It pulled ideas off shelves. It also created a quiet lever, march-in rights. In theory, the government can force additional licenses if a publicly funded invention isn't available on reasonable terms. In practice, agencies read reasonable terms as supply, not price. Patients hear we paid for the runway, then see a ticket they can't afford. SBIR and STTR grants bridge the valley of death for small biotechs. A phase-I-approved concept, a phase II to scale. Venture capital shows up once the riskiest unknowns are answered with public money. The company files an S1, touts NIH support in a footnote, and raises cash on the back of a poster that still smells like printer ink. Years later, shareholders applaud a launch price that would make a mortgage blush. Licenses bury details in appendices, a 3% royalty to the university, milestone payments at Phase II, and FDA approval may be a slice on sales above a threshold. Those dollars fund new labs and scholarships. What's missing is any cap on price. Universities say we don't set price. Companies say we must recoup risk. The family at the counter wonders why recoup feels like ransom. Manufacturers push back, fairly, on the myth that the product springs fully formed from a campus bench. Toxicology, GMP manufacturing, global trials, quality systems, inspections, none of that runs on baked sales. The attrition rate from Phase I to approval is brutal. But when one drug lives, the Lighthouse Price points back at innovation without showing the public hand that lifted the first mile. Micro story, a gene therapy born in a Midwestern lab clears the FDA with accelerated approval. The price, $2.1 million for a one-time dose. The company cites lifetime savings versus blindness and special education costs. A Medicaid director flips a legal pad and asks, "How do I pay that this quarter?" Foundations set up travel grants and hotel vouchers. A mother frames the first school photo where her son looks straight at the camera. The invoice, like the moment, is real. Patient groups keep the lights on too. Rare disease parents organize 5Ks, fund biobanks, push natural history studies the company later relies on to win approval. Then premiums rise when the therapy arrives. They tour the lab in matching T-shirts, sign a giant check, and later refinance the house when the first bill hits. Public risk turns private when the cap table prints. Private reward turns public again when budgets break. March-in becomes a ritual fight every few years. Advocates petition the government to exercise it over a high-priced, publicly funded drug. Agencies decline, citing precedent and statutory limits. Universities warn that aggressive terms will drive sponsors to friendlier campuses. It's a prisoner's dilemma with autoclaves. If one school writes price clauses, the deal goes to the neighbor who won't. Meanwhile, the supply chain that turns a discovery into a vial leans on public scaffolding. Tax credits, orphan incentives, pediatric exclusivity. Those are policy choices to tilt the field toward cures. They're not price controls. The price still emerges from negotiations with PBMs like CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, who demand rebates keyed to that lighthouse number taxpayers helped make possible. In the end, the ribbon cutting happens at a gleaming headquarters, not the campus basement where it started. The press release thanks collaborators. The investor call thanks pricing discipline. The family thanks the nurse who found a grant in time. Taxpayers pay twice, once for the spark, again for the spotlight, and the only lever labeled reasonable terms hangs on a wall no one touches. Selling the cure you didn't know you needed. After the lab and the license, the molecule meets marketing, and demand stops being an accident. In a bright agency boardroom, a creative director clicks through a storyboard. A dad tossing a baseball, a grandmother baking, a caption that reads, "Ask your doctor if it's right for you." The ad isn't just selling relief. It's selling a diagnosis you didn't know you had, and it's buying leverage for the Lighthouse Price CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx will negotiate against. Direct-to-consumer ads build familiarity before you ever book an appointment. Symptoms become a checklist. Mid-afternoon fatigue, occasional worry, trouble sleeping. Most of us nod. The closing line, "Talk to your doctor," writes the first draft of the visit. By Monday morning, clinicians hear brand names, not conditions, and the patient's confidence is rehearsed by a 30-second spot that ran during the game. Meanwhile, the real influence is happening in conference halls. Key opinion leaders, KOLs, fill ballrooms with slides that polish the same data until it gleams. They're respected clinicians with disclosure slides that crawl. A speaker says, "In my practice, I've seen remarkable durability," a phrase that threads the needle between experience and evidence. Advisory boards refine the tone. The goal isn't a script, it's alignment. The kind PBMs reward with access once the rebate makes sense. Medical journals carry the tune. A manuscript appears with a footnote. Editorial support provided by a communications firm. That's ghostwriting with nicer letterhead. The limitations get tucked into paragraph 6. The conclusion leans promising. A month later, CME modules arrive, supported by an educational grant, walking through cases where the sponsor's product appears earlier, longer, and in broader populations. The quiz at the end nudge steers the same. Guidelines harden demand. A committee updates thresholds for high risk, widening the tent. A therapy moves from second line to first on emerging evidence. If you're a plan, guidelines become policy. If you're a clinician, they become cover. If you're a patient, they become the script when the portal says preferred. A drug that barely cleared a surrogate endpoint now rides a pathway that starts at diagnosis. Microstory, a primary care clinic in Phoenix, adopts new guidance that halves the threshold for pre-disease. A mailer from the brand's patient education campaign lands the same week. Within 2 months, scripts triple. The clinic's nurse manager adds a prior auth specialist. The PBM's denial queue swells. The brand's field team emails. Great momentum, keep educating. The data hasn't changed. The category did. Online, sponsored patient stories blur into support groups. A teacher posts, "I finally found an answer," tagged partner in small print. The link routes to a site registered to a brand team. A chatbot offers to help you talk to your doctor, printing a conversation guide that names one therapy 3 times. Meanwhile, ambassadors host live streams about living well, a sincere community wrapped in a funnel that points to the same prior auth form. Physicians feel the squeeze. A patient arrives with an ad in their Notes app, insists on the brand. The doctor prefers a different class. CVS Caremark's formulary prefers something else. Express Scripts flags step therapy. OptumRx's portal cues prior auth. The debate sounds clinical. The outcome follows contract. If the value dossier, a manufacturer sent the PBM promised lower ER visits over 12 months. That rebate now funds a tier position the clinic can't outrun. Disease branding does the rest. Risk becomes pathology. A lab value that sits in the gray zone turns into a trigger. Treat now to prevent downstream costs. The value deck we saw at launch starts speaking every day. This pill pays for itself. Sometimes it will. Often it won't for this patient at this time, yet the default shifts, earlier, longer, broader. Ghostwriting keeps cadence. A busy clinician lends a name to a draft, edits are real, framing is subtle. An adverse event becomes manageable with monitoring. Over time, the literature tilts just enough that skepticism feels out of step with the totality of evidence. CME turns tilt into templates. Case studies mirror your clinic, and the right answer happens to be what the sponsor sells. Meanwhile, real-world evidence projects mine claims data for supportive signals. A manufacturer funds a study showing reduced hospital days in adherent patients. PBMs love those slides. Adherence equals rebate certainty. The study sits in a binder titled Payer Evidence, ready for the next renegotiation. The Lighthouse Price holds because the savings flow through models plans can't replicate at the counter. Microstory, Jamal, a long-haul driver, starts a new sleep aid after a telehealth ad promises rest without grogginess. 2 weeks later, he fails a random alertness test. The clinic prints the CME handout, titrate slowly. His dispatcher prints a suspension notice. The ad never mentioned safety-sensitive jobs. Jamal learns the fine print in a hearing room. Demand has a cost. Volume lifts spend even when unit price stays flat. Clinics hire more staff to wrangle prior auths. Appeals grow longer. Employers raise premiums to cover the uptick. Members think prices rose. Sometimes it's more people on therapy, earlier and longer, nudged by marketing that seeped into guidelines that shaped formularies that PBMs locked into place with rebate checks. When safety signals surface, the story rarely stops. A Dear Healthcare Provider letter lands in inboxes. Labels add warnings. Reps update talking points. The ad rotation swaps a tagline, "Use as directed." The momentum keeps moving. CVS Specialty still calls to support adherence, and the fee still posts because the metric improved. That's how the machine funds the Lighthouse. Sell the diagnosis, steer the pathway, promise modeled savings, and let the PBM reward the predictability. The system didn't trick you, it trained you. Clinics, committees, contracts, and commercials moving in chorus. By the time a family reaches the counter, the argument is over. The only choice left is the card they hand across the glass. Safety nets with holes. When demand outruns caution, the guardrails turn into portals and checklists. FDA approval isn't a finish line. It's a green light with conditions that assume real-world vigilance will catch what trials missed. But post-market surveillance rests on 3 shaky legs: voluntary reports, observational data, and promised confirmatory trials that too often arrive late to a crowded clinic. Voluntary adverse event reports, MedWatch, and manufacturer hotlines depend on busy people seeing patterns in noise. Underreporting is baked in. A pharmacist files after a double shift. A caregiver doesn't know a form exists. Signals dribble instead of serve. Inside brand safety teams, analysts argue baseline risk versus causal link, while marketing asks when to update the slide deck. Observational studies mine claims and EHRs to spot trouble the trials were too small to see. They're powerful and imperfect. Confounding hides everywhere. Sicker patients cluster on certain therapies. Adherence correlates with outcomes in ways that flatter the drug. PBMs love studies that show fewer ER visits. Those slides sell total cost of care savings, while the out-of-pocket at the counter never move. Accelerated approvals promise speed now, proof later. The later is a confirmatory trial that must show real clinical benefit, not just a lab value wiggling the right way. Too often later means years. In that gap, CVS Specialty still calls to support adherence, Express Scripts still tallies performance fees, and OptumRx still measures persistence, metrics that look great in a rebate meeting while the question, does it truly help, waits on a database lock. Micro story, a pain pill cleared on a surrogate marker rolls across primary care. Year 2, ER docs in 3 states notice falls and cognitive fog in older patients. Reports trickle in. The company labels it background risk. Year 5, an internal review flags a pattern. Legal wants more data. Commercial asks for balanced messaging. A boxed warning lands in Year 7. The drug remains on the market. Families learn the warning at the kitchen table, not the launch ad. REMS programs are supposed to be the seatbelts. Prescriber training, pharmacy certification, patient registries, lab monitoring. Seatbelts only work if they're buckled. In practice, REMS can devolve into portal clicks by overworked staff. A hematology clinic spends 2 hours a day satisfying checkboxes so a courier can release a cooler. The intent is safety. The lived effect is friction layered on prior auth. When red flags rise, letters go out. Dear healthcare provider, notices arrive in inboxes doctors barely triage. Labels add warnings in fonts no patient reads. Reps visit with clarifications. Patients feel it as a sudden switch, a lower dose, a new lab schedule, a different medication that triggers a fresh prior auth in the PBM's portal. Safety turns into another reason for delay. Some failures crash into view. A cardiometabolic therapy shows unexpected strokes in a real-world cohort. Trading halts. The company pauses distribution out of an abundance of caution. The FDA convenes an advisory committee. A month later, the drug returns with a narrower label and stricter monitoring. 2 years later, a fine lands for prior promotional claims. Stock recovers. Patients live with the outcomes. Settlements seal the ugliest detail. Self-policing is the weak hinge. Companies are obligated to file periodic safety updates, escalate signals, and complete confirmatory trials. They're also incentivized not to ignite panic, hand a competitor a talking point, or jeopardize a formulary tier CVS Caremark just granted. The gray zone between monitor and act stretches across thousands of refills. Hospitals build their own buffers. Pharmacy and therapeutics committees restrict use to specialists, require baseline labs, force informed consent. It helps and creates a zip code lottery. One system allows it on Tuesdays with tight criteria. Another says no until the confirmatory data arrives. Patients with the same diagnosis get different rules because risk tolerance varies by committee budget and malpractice memory. Micro story, an independent pharmacist in Iowa keeps a notebook of near misses, duplicate therapies, contraindicated combos, doses the portal approved that didn't match renal function. She calls clinics daily, holds shipments, documents each fix. In March, a retroactive DIR fee wipes her quarter's profit for non-adherence on a drug she refused to dispense until a dose was corrected. Safety cost her twice. When lawsuits arrive, discovery drags timelines into daylight. Slide decks with mitigation narratives, emails toggling between signal under review and Q3 exposure, talking points crafted before the confirmatory trial readout. Compliance becomes a cottage industry, monitors, audits, mandatory modules. The machine learns to leave fewer fingerprints, not to move slower. Patients adapt in the gaps. A mother keeps a binder of side effects with dates, doses, and blood work because the portal loses attachments. A trucker switches to night shifts after a new med makes mornings unsafe. A teacher schedules labs at 6:30 a.m. to avoid missing class. None of them ever meet the advisory committee. They meet voicemail trees, lab techs, and the same counter where coinsurance rides the list. The promise of vigilance was simple. Truth would sharpen with time. It does eventually. But the time between first signal and real action is measured in refills and prior auth renewals. And while the guardrails argue with themselves, the system keeps perfect attendance at what it measures: adherence, persistence, market share. Safety nets with holes still catch something. Too often, it isn't the first fall. Courtrooms and cover charges. When the guardrails don't hold, the next stop is a beige courtroom where fluorescent lights hum and secrets get priced. Discovery is the one tool that pries open files nobody meant you to see. Email strings titled Q4 Rebate Strategy Final V7, PPTX, spreadsheets mapping exclusion incentives, memos pairing safety signal under review with Q3 quota exposure. A sales VP writes, if we lose preferred status, we lose the quarter. A medical liaison replies, data are inconclusive, guidance pending. The dates line up with a new black box warning. Defense counsel says correlation isn't causation. The plaintiff's attorney calls the next witness. Multi-district litigation becomes a holding pen for lives that look the same on paper. Diagnosis, prescription, injury. Cases consolidate. Bellwethers test the story. In the hallway, settlement teams count heads and compute a number big enough for a headline, small enough for an earnings call. Checks go out. Statements say no admission of wrongdoing. Stock dips on Monday, recovers by Friday. Families don't. Now the piece that finally names names. September 2024, the Federal Trade Commission sues the country's largest PBMs, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, alleging they use their market power and rebate walls to block cheaper biosimilars and keep list prices high. The complaint spells out the scheme. Manufacturers pay to be preferred. Contracts penalize plans that add rivals, and patients get steered to pricier brands even when lower cost options exist. The FTC asks for structural relief and injunctions. Each company disputes the claims and says their models deliver savings for clients and patients. The case is ongoing. The filings read like a translation guide to the maze you've been walking. Micro story, a former market access manager sits in a deposition, fingers tight around a paper cup. On the screen, defend formulary share, minimize switch risk. He says those are standard planning terms. Next slide. If biosimilar adoption exceeds 20%, escalate exclusion bonus. Who wrote that? Agency partners rooted through legal. Did you ever recommend lowering promotion after early safety signals? Silence then, not my lane. Rebate deals take their turn under oath. Contracts surface with most favored clauses, narrow networks, and market share guarantees. A plan executive testifies, adding the cheaper competitor would trigger a penalty. The PBM counters, aggregate savings were higher under the preferred arrangement. The judge asks, higher for whom? The answer depends on which ledger you're allowed to see. Sometimes emails cross the line from blunt to bleak. In one exhibit, a regional director writes, we can't afford a price cut. Rebate guarantees will miss and access will unwind. Another replies, lift WAC 5%, expand copy support, protect net. WAC is the list price. Protect net means keep the behind-the-scenes price stable while the headline climbs, so coinsurance climbs with it. Regulators arrive after juries or not at all. Deferred prosecution agreements land, no guilty plea if the company funds compliance improvements and hires an outside monitor. The monitor audits training decks, reviews speaker notes, files reports the public won't read. Sales goals gain new adjectives: compliant, responsible, patient-centric. The targets stay. Gag orders and confidentiality keep the best exhibits sealed. Plaintiffs sign NDAs with relief and resentment mixed. A class action might mail you a $27 check and a paragraph of legalese. Your deductible doesn't budge. Prior authorizations still need faxes. Coupons still expire. Judges don't set prices, markets do. Inside contracts, no court forces into daylight unless a statute demands it, and most don't. Pharmacies feel none of the courtroom and all of the math. Months after fills, performance clawbacks hit, DIR fees tied to adherence metrics the PBM's own specialty arm measure. Independents absorb the punch or close. A week later, a letter routes their patients to mail order for convenience. Every now and then, a redaction slips. A slide titled Win Conditions lists control access, shape guidelines, sustain price architecture, protect share. You've seen each piece already at the counter in the clinic on the bill. Courtrooms surface facts, they don't rebuild incentives. The settlements teach companies what not to write down. The monitors teach them which door to use. The rest of us keep paying at the window marked pharmacy, where the price is printed in ink and the discount is printed in secrets. The patent Thicket and Evergreening. Everything you saw in the courtroom needs one more ingredient to stick. Time. Patents buy time. And when one clock runs low, the industry finds another clock to win. Start with the trunk, the core compound patent that protects the molecule. Then the branches, polymorphs, salts, crystal forms, leaves sprout, coatings that dissolve slower, stabilizers that survive heat, storage methods that ride trucks without degrading. Each claim can add months or years of legal friction. One blockbuster can carry a portfolio with 100 filings. A rival doesn't face one gate, they face a neighborhood watch that never sleeps. Secondary patents sound minor but bite hard. Change twice daily to once daily and claim improved adherence. Swap a tablet for an orally disintegrating film and call it novel delivery. Add a kid-friendly flavor. File pediatric formulation. On paper, it's non-obvious. In court, it's a wall you climb with depositions and millions in fees, while the brand keeps list price and rebate architecture intact with CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx. Product hopping turns the screws. As the original nears generic entry, the brand nudges prescribers to a slightly altered version, new strength, new combo, new release curve, protected by fresh patents. Then, right before generics land, the company retires the old NDC. Pharmacists can't substitute a generic for a script written to the tweaked version. Patients are switched for convenience. Competition arrives to an empty dock. Formularies echo it when exclusion lists align across PBMs. Microstory, an acid reflux pill from the 90s, evolved into a stack of strengths and coatings. The core patent died years ago. A generic maker filed. A lawsuit arrived within days, triggering an automatic 30-month stay. While the case crawled, the brand launched a new and improved once-nightly capsule with a shiny coupon. Doctors moved. By the time the first generic one, few scripts matched the old dosage. The independent pharmacy saw out of stock on the NDC it needed, and a denial if it tried to switch. Citizen petitions add sand to the gears. A brand files a last-minute plea at the FDA. Please reconsider dissolution specs, evaluate child-resistant features, require additional stability data. Most are rejected as meritless. The clock still ticks. 1 quarter delayed is 1 quarter booked at list minus rebate, while Coinsurance rides the headline. Pay for delay moves backstage. Would-be generic challenges a patent. Discovery looms. A settlement appears, reverse payment masked as a supply deal, co-promotion, or data license. The generic enters later with guaranteed profit. The brand buys extra time at full price. Consumers fund the truce every time a plan pays list minus confidential rebates to PBMs who promise aggregate savings. Authorized generics complicate the landing. The brand launches its own generic under a subsidiary the day true rivals arrive. Pharmacies see a generic NDC with pricing the brand controls. Early volume stays in-house, competitors suffocate. The press says competition, while spreadsheets say managed decline. Biologics raise the walls higher. These aren't simple chemicals, they're living, folded, temperamental. Patents multiply, cell lines, purification steps, buffer compositions, vial closures, temperature ranges. A reference biologic can defend itself with dozens of claims. Biosimilars face the patent dance, a choreography of lists and lawsuits where the reference maker litigates a few patents now and springs the rest when launch nears. Uncertainty is a weapon. Investors flinch. Hospital P&T committees delay switches because rebate guarantees with OptumRx and Express Scripts punish surprises mid-year. Rebate walls reinforce the thicket. Even if a biosimilar wins approval and a clean interchangeability tag, a PBM's contract can make adding it financially painful this plan year. A hospital pharmacy wants the cheaper option. The plan's deal threatens penalties if market share slips. The brand points to no automatic substitution without prescriber sign-off, and inertia wins. Meanwhile, the originator raises WAC 5%, expands copay support, protects net. Patients, Coinsurance climbs off the headline. The net stays flat in the memo you'll never read. Microstory, a Midwestern cancer center tries to switch to a biosimilar expected to save 7 figures. CVS Caremark's formulary flags an edit. Accredo's distribution footprint controls delivery. A clause requires 90-day notice to alter site of care sourcing. The center delays. 3 months of savings evaporate. The CFO signs the brand's renewal to maintain continuity. The patient pays the same Coinsurance on a higher list. Hospitals and payers try to outflank the forest. Some write generic first and biosimilar first policies with teeth. Others split tenders 60-40 between 2 suppliers and flip share if deliveries slip. PBMs push back with clinical equivalence reviews and penalty clauses. Manufacturers counter with coupons and education. Legal threats hum in the background. Tortious interference, breach of covenant, false advertising. Everyone postures. The calendar wins. Antitrust suits sometimes call it what it is, a thicket. Plaintiffs show honeycombs of patents around inhalers with minor nozzle tweaks or around injectors with dose counter increments. Defendants talk investment protection and safety innovations. Judges parse novelty and non-obviousness. Months become years. Each month funds another lobby push on the Hill to preserve exclusivities and another rebate renegotiation that bakes today's price into tomorrow's tier. The human cost is unglamorous and huge. Generics delayed mean payers stuck at brand prices, employers raise premiums, unions give back raises, clinics cut staff, safety net programs stretch because fewer meds slide into Tier 1. A senior chooses heat over refills in January when deductibles reset. An independent pharmacy shuts its lights after another retroactive fee hits for adherence on a drug the PBMs own specialty arm control. And even when competition arrives, the maze doesn't end. Confusion about interchangeability keeps scripts on the brand. Pharmacy reimbursement formulas dull the incentive to dispense the cheapest NDC. Rebate architecture still steers volume to incumbents with most favored clauses. The Thicket did its job, buy time to build habits, contracts, and fear of switching, so the cheaper path exists on paper while the old one stays plowed. This isn't cleverness for its own sake. It's leverage turned into calendar. Every extra month at brand price pays for the lawyer who found the salt, the engineer who tuned the nozzle, the analyst who wrote the exclusion clause, and the lobbyist who protected the exclusivity. By the time the wall cracks, the next drug is already planting saplings around its trunk, and the rebate meetings have reserved next January's room. The generic, that isn't cheap. Everyone waits for the price drop like it's a holiday sale. Patent expires, confetti falls, and the register barely blinks. Generics are supposed to be the relief valve. Sometimes they are. Too often, they inherit a maze designed upstream by CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, and add problems no one budgets for. Start with supply. Cheap only stays cheap when multiple manufacturers compete. Consolidation thins the bench, one plant in India, another in New Jersey, a third in Europe. If FDA inspectors flag a quality lapse at one site, supply tightens overnight. Wholesalers raise bids, pharmacies scramble, prices spike. It's a seesaw, fewer makers, higher price, no villain required. Micro story, a children's clinic in Wichita refreshes the wholesaler portal Monday morning. Amoxicillin suspension that cost $10 last month now lists at $142 with limited availability. Parents get calls to swap prescriptions. Pharmacies ration. The pediatrician prints dosing for an awkward substitute and warns about taste. The wholesaler sends an apologetic email about upstream constraints. Nobody refunds. Gas money for families who drove an hour. Authorized generics ad fog. The brand launches its own generic through a subsidiary the week true rivals arrive. Pharmacies see a generic NDC at a price the brand controls, lower than the brand, higher than a competitive market. Early volume stays in-house, real generics fight for air, and the spreadsheet says margin while patients assume generic equals cheap. Reimbursement turns pain into policy. Plans use MAC lists, maximum allowable cost, to cap what they'll pay pharmacies for generics. When acquisition costs jump and MAC lists lag, independents dispense at a loss. They can't do that for long. Some refuse fills, some steer to alternatives, some close. Chains swallow losses on Tuesday and claw them back Thursday with retroactive fees. DIR charges tied to adherence metrics the PBMs own specialty arm measure. Spread pricing doesn't vanish when a pill is cheap. A PBM can bill a plan $42, reimburse the pharmacy $35, keep the $7 spread, and call the difference aggregate savings. Multiply that across millions of fills. Employers think generics equal savings. They do, unless the toll booth hides in the invoice. Micro story, Priya runs an independent on the south side. She buys a blood pressure generic for $14.88. OptumRx reimburses $13.96. She loses 92 cents before lights and labor. 3 months later, a retrospective DIR fee claws back another $61 for performance on a metric she doesn't control. Friday night, she updates a spreadsheet labeled holes in the boat and decides to close Monday. Shortages amplify everything. One generic vanishes, demand rushes to substitutes. Those climb too. Hospital P&T committees ration vials of a basic sedative. Anesthesiologists prioritize cases. Nurses reconstitute leftovers under new protocols. A chief pharmacy officer calls 3 wholesalers and a gray market broker before lunch. Workarounds add risk and cost that never show up in the patient portal. Even when prices fall, savings don't always reach the counter. Coinsurance on a preferred brand with a fat rebate can beat a cheap generic without one. PBM logic favors the arrangement that sends checks back to the plan, not the one that lowers what you see on the receipt. So a member pays $20 for a rebated brand and $38 for the non-rebated generic. Savings flow upstream, confusion flows down. Regulators try patches, anti-gouging statutes, expedited FDA reviews for shortage drugs, pilot importation under Section 804. Some help. Many collide with lawsuits, capacity limits, and the same opacity that protects list-minus rebate deals. Meanwhile, state auditors uncover spread pricing in Medicaid generic claims, PBMs promise reforms, contracts change names. The math reappears elsewhere as admin and data fees. Cartel allegations lurk in the background. Attorneys general have sued generic makers over synchronized hikes on bread and butter drugs. Group texts, conferences, parallel jumps, the complaints read like a group project with no professor. Companies deny wrongdoing, some settle without admitting. Prices rarely crawl back to the old baseline once the dust settles. Quality lapses a broad ripple through shelves here. A single Form 483 can choke a category if that site made half the supply. Patients don't read inspection letters, they read out of stock and take a substitute that upsets their stomach. The pharmacist apologizes, the wholesaler shrugs. The plan's helpline says supply constraints and recommends mail order. Micro story, Louis, a retiree in Tampa, picks up his ACE inhibitor. Last month, $8, this month, $47. The tech says your plan's MAC changed. The pharmacist whispers, our cost tripled. Louis pays with a card and skips the coenzyme Q10 he swears helps. At dinner, he tells his daughter he's fine. He is. Generics still save the system billions, but only when the lane is clear. Multiple manufacturers, updated MACs, no hidden spreads, and no rebate architecture steering away. Without that, the cheap version inherits every flaw of the brand world: thin supply, opaque contracts, perverse incentives, and adds a few of its own. Competition only works when it can reach the counter. In this maze, it often arrives late, rerouted, and short. Why other countries pay less? Outside the US, the same molecules land with softer numbers because the rails are different. While our prices float on list-minus rebate deals brokered by CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, other countries bolt drugs to budgets with centralized bargaining, value thresholds, and tendering that treats medicine like infrastructure, not impulse buys. Start in Ottawa. A civil servant opens a reference basket spreadsheet. Canada's Patented Medicine Prices Review Board compares proposed list prices to peer nations and caps the ceiling when a number looks out of line. It's dry, bureaucratic, and devastatingly effective at stopping Lighthouse prices from lighting the sky in the first place. There's no myth about Courtrooms off list because list is a ceiling, not a stage prop. London moves on a different axis. At NICE, analysts feed models with quality-adjusted life years. The question is blunt: what's the health gained worth per pound? If the incremental cost-effectiveness ratio clears the threshold, the NHS negotiates access. If it doesn't, the answer is no, or not at that price. Manufacturers come back with confidential discounts or outcomes-based deals that make the math work. Patients don't swipe cards for Courtrooms off a headline. They collect the medication with out-of-pocket capped or near zero. Berlin's AMNOG process asks a simpler thing first. Is the new therapy better than what we already use? If no additional benefit, the price aligns with standard care. If yes, statutory insurers negotiate a reimbursement level informed by that verdict. The public doesn't see the sausage, they see predictability. Launch day isn't a moonshot, it's a meeting. Micro story, a cancer drug debuts in Europe at a number US oncologists recognize. The UK balks, not cost-effective. Headlines say denial. 3 months later, after a managed access agreement, the drug appears on the NHS formulary at a confidential discount widely whispered to cut the price nearly in half. Patients get access. The budget survives. The list price remains a signal for markets like ours, where Courtrooms rides the headline. Tendering turns price into a race when products are interchangeable. In Sweden, entire classes like insulin go to bid. Winners supply at a national rate. Contracts include escape hatches for supply failures. New Zealand's PHARMAC plays a similar hand, using a fixed budget to force hard choices and long contracts. The message is clear: want the market, beat the price, and deliver. There's no rebate wall to buy your way around. There's a door and a doorman with a ledger. Are there trade-offs? Yes, access can be slower. A therapy you could get tomorrow in the US might take months while a committee weighs data. Some countries say no until a better offer arrives. Real people wait. But those same people don't face a January where deductibles reset and insulin becomes a mini mortgage. The risk shifts from the kitchen table to the conference room, and the conference room is staffed to hold it. Manufacturers argue the U.S. bankrolls global R&D, that lower prices abroad are subsidized by American margins. There's truth and debate. U.S. sales generate outsized free cash flow, but taxpayers also fund early science everywhere, and Europe still sees new drugs, just with terms set up front. As one health economist likes to say, if you don't anchor on value, you anchor on whatever the seller says. We chose the latter and built a rebate industry around it. Benefit design finishes the divergence. In the UK and Germany, Coinsurance off-list isn't a concept because the patient share is capped and the list is constrained. In Spain, a diabetic taps a card for a few euros. In the US, that same pen meets a deductible on January 3rd and a mom does math about rent. Our middlemen negotiate downstream. Their payers negotiate once for everyone. We're nibbling at their model. Medicare now negotiates a short list of high-spend drugs with penalty teeth. Inflation rebates claw back hikes above CPI. Some states pool purchasing or pursue Section 804 importation, but scope and timing lag. The first federal negotiations touch a handful of drugs over years. Meanwhile, PBM contracts still reward high lighthouse prices paired with rich rebates that never hit the counter. Back to Ottawa, a staffer emails a company, "Your proposal exceeds our reference threshold." The reply offers a confidential discount tied to outcomes and volume. A term sheet updates, a national spend line holds. It isn't cinematic, it's budgeting a country. And it's why a pharmacist in Paris doesn't whisper, "That'll be $642, while a mom stares at insulin like a lottery ticket she can't cash. Lobbying, loopholes, and the Hill. While Ottawa caps a ceiling, K Street loosens floorboards. A pharmaceutical lobbyist steps into a senator's office with a binder that opens on patient stories, flips to jobs in the district, and lands on a draft amendment. The pitch is polished. The subtext is math. Change 5 words, move 5 billion. Campaign cash is the prelude. Breakfast fundraisers serve lukewarm coffee and hot talking points. Protect innovation, protect access, protect local manufacturing. Checks cross linen. A week later, a letter mirroring the talking points appears on committee letterhead. The signatures look bipartisan. The edits look familiar. The revolving door keeps the script tight. A former CMS deputy now advises a trade association. A Hill health aide crosses to a public policy role at a top firm. They don't threaten, they translate. CBO will score that line harshly. OMB will flag this provision. The draft changes a clause, the outcome changes a market. The original concrete pour was Medicare Part D's non-interference clause. It barred the government from negotiating drug prices directly, outsourcing bargaining to PBMs like CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx. The promise was competition. The result was list minus rebate architecture. Years later, any attempt to crack it meets the same chorus. Negotiation equals rationing. Innovation will flee. Jobs will leave your district. Micro story, a freshman representative arrives promising to tackle insulin. Their first bill authorizes broad negotiation, inflation penalties, and transparency on PBM fees. By markup, broad negotiation becomes a narrow pilot for a short list. Penalties morph into rebates with exceptions. PBM transparency becomes upon request with trade secret carve-outs. The press release says historic reform. The footnotes say manageable. Trade groups run national ads while lobbyists work cloakrooms. A grandmother on a couch thanks a coalition for protecting seniors' access. The fine print reveals funding from manufacturers whose Lighthouse Prices fund PBM rebates. In committee, a witness from a patient group warns against government price setting. Their donor list, disclosed on page 9 of a PDF, includes the brand at the center of the fight. Carve-outs hide in definitions. Best price rules meant to guarantee Medicaid the lowest price, gain exceptions for outcomes contracts that few can audit. Orphan drug incentives, designed for tiny populations, stretch to block competition in profitable niches. A small biotech exemption shields subsidiaries of giants because the legal entity on a license is smaller than the logo on the tower. States push, courts pull. One legislature passes an anti-gouging statute. A court strikes it as interfering with interstate commerce. Another builds a Section 804 importation program. Federal approval trickles out, lawsuits follow, scope narrows. A third mandates PBM transparency. Firms sue over trade secrets. The play isn't brute force. It's delay until the clock runs out and elections reset the calendar. Rulemaking becomes trench warfare. After Congress grants Medicare limited negotiation, agencies must define maximum fair price, good faith engagement, data submission. Comments flood in thousands of pages parsing commas. One footnote flips billions from patients to plans or back to manufacturers. Most people never read the footnote. Lobbyists do. So do the PBMs whose fee lines rise when list prices rise. Unknown to most voters, tax code knobs matter. The R&D credit lowers the cost of lab benches as intended. Another deduction lets companies expense direct-to-consumer ads. Critics try to end it. The effort stalls in a subcommittee room where ratings weak and a budget deadline collide. The deduction survives, the ad during the game stays. Trade policy adds armor. Companies push for long data exclusivity periods in international agreements, locking foreign markets into timelines that mirror ours. When partner countries resist, the chapter softens but the spirit stays. It's insurance against a world that might negotiate harder tomorrow. Micro story, a finance committee senator staffs a midnight negotiation. Industry offers voluntary inflation caps tied to therapeutic classes with generous exceptions. PBMs argue for preserving rebate flexibility. Employer coalitions push for pass-through mandates. By sunrise, the compromise is a narrow Medicare inflation rebate, exempting commercial plans. The senator calls it a step. K Street calls it sustainable. The analytics sharpen the pressure. District-level models predict job losses if a plant closes, even if closure isn't planned. A staffer hears, this vote risks 1,200 jobs. CBO scores the bill without the threat. The threat still edits the next paragraph. Meanwhile, leaked emails from a brand team blunt the euphemism. Do not cut whack, it will unwind PBM access. From a PBM strategist, maintain list, expand copay support, protect net, guarantee rebate. WAC is list price. Protect net means keep the behind-the-scenes price steady by shifting pain to patients who pay coinsurance off the headline. Grassroots pushes back anyway. Employers, unions, and patient groups flood town halls with insulin receipts. Medicare's out-of-pocket cap lands. It helps real people. It also shifts costs to premiums and leaves commercial plans to negotiate inside the same maze. Lighthouse prices remain, rebate walls remain, accumulators and maximizers keep counting. PBMs fund their own advocacy, arguing they deliver savings while opposing rules that would end spread pricing or require acquisition cost plus pharmacy pay. They warn of narrower networks, reduced access, and unintended consequences. Independents bring spreadsheets showing negative reimbursements. Health systems bring graphs of DIR fee spikes. The hearing adjourns with promises of further study. The Hill's rhythm favors incumbents. Continuing resolutions, debt ceilings, election cycles. Crises eat oxygen. Comprehensive reform needs a calm season no one gets. So change arrives in slivers. State pass-through mandates, federal pilots, FTC suits dragging rebate walls into daylight while the architecture holds. Policy shapes prices, money shapes policy. That's not cynicism. It's the mechanic under the hood. And the reason the next chapter keeps a wallet on the counter and a plan in your pocket. The coupon trap, an assistance mirage. While Congress edits commas, the rescue shows up as plastic. A glossy copay card promises pay as little as $10. At the CVS counter it works. The inhaler drops from $180 to $10. The dad exhales, thanks the tech, and thinks the drug got cheaper. It didn't. The discount came from the manufacturer, not the plan, and it's wired to a rule the PBM hid in the benefits booklet, the accumulator. Accumulators live upstream, not at the register. When a coupon covers $170 of that $180 copay, the accumulator logs it as manufacturer assistance that doesn't count toward your deductible. March feels merciful. June hurts. You still owe the full deductible because none of those coupon dollars advanced it. The plan saved. The brand kept volume. You pay later when the refill lands without the card or the deductible bites all at once. Maximizers rewire the relief with cleaner math. OptumRx or Express Scripts sets your monthly copay precisely so the manufacturer's assistance gets drained evenly across the year. If the card covers $6,000 annually, your out-of-pocket glides near zero while the card pays almost everything. You feel protected. The total spend doesn't change. Employers see the bill in premiums next renewal and ask why pharmacy costs rose when members paid less. Micro story, Sierra, a diabetic teen in Phoenix, picks up pens at CVS with a copay card that drops her cost to $15. In month 4, her mom learns their plan uses an accumulator. The $285 per box the card paid didn't count toward their $4,000 deductible. In July, the card hits its annual cap. The next box rings at $568. Sierra rations, her CGM alarms at 2 a.m., and her track season ends in the ER. By September, HR announces higher premiums due to specialty pharmacy trends. Assistance programs look like mercy and sometimes are. Independent charities cover coinsurance. Manufacturer hubs ship bridge drug during prior auth purgatory. Free drug programs fill gaps for the uninsured. The forms are a gauntlet: income documents, denial letters, tax returns. If you work 2 jobs or don't on a scanner, windows close before help arrives. Social workers set calendar alerts for fund openings that slam shut in minute. A family that misses the 9-minute window hears, apply next quarter. The structure isn't neutral. Manufacturers fund disease-specific charities with grants that appear independent. Enforcement actions have alleged coordination, donors steering dollars toward categories where copay help preserves high list prices. Settlements land, disclaimers lengthen. The pattern survives, philanthropy that greases a price nobody cuts. Coupons also scramble competition. A plan might prefer a $40 generic. The brand's coupon undercuts the patient's cash price to $5 while the plan still pays list minus rebate. Members choose the cheaper counter price. Total spend swells upstream. PBMs hit their rebate guarantees. Brands protect market share. Employers pay the delta and hear aggregate savings in the slide deck. Micro story: Maria, the pharmacy owner on Main Street, watches a mother juggle 2 inhalers. With the brand's coupon, one is $10. The generic is $39. Maria explains the math. The mother chooses the $10. $3 months later, an accumulator letter says none of those coupon dollars counted. The family owes the full deductible in October, right when heating bills rise. Maria eats another negative reimbursement and closes on Thursdays to survive. Then come maximizers with a smile. Great news, your out-of-pocket will be low all year. Behind the email, the plan tuned the copay to harvest the full value of assistance every month. Patients feel stability. Employers fund the harvest. Manufacturers bank volume. The Lighthouse Price remains untouched. Coinsurance still rides the headline when the card taps out or the calendar flips. Employers push back with blunt tools. Some ban copay cards when a cheaper therapeutic alternative exists. Some steer members to cash pay networks where acquisition cost plus beats insured copays. Some carve out specialty to pass through vendors and require white bagging to cut percentage markups. Members feel denials and delays. HR says lowering total cost of care. The floor asks, where's my refill? There's one more twist. Assistance can disqualify. A Medicaid applicant who accepts manufacturer-free drug may trigger income or eligibility questions later. A Medicare beneficiary who uses a coupon runs into anti-kickback rules. Many cards exclude federal programs altogether. The people most crushed by coinsurance often can't legally swipe the lifeline. Assistance smooths today and preserves tomorrow's architecture. It keeps refills moving, market share stable, rebate guarantees intact, and outrage muted at the counter. It's anesthesia, not surgery. Every copay card that saves the day becomes a reason no one in the next room cuts the list. Workable fixes people don't hear about. If the maze runs on contracts and habits, the fixes start there. Quiet rewrites that move invoices without press releases. The most effective ones don't try to win a speech. They win a signature. Start with buyers who act like a block. In 2025, a coalition of 6 states pooled public employees and Medicaid into a single pharmacy contract with teeth. Pass-through PBM only, acquisition cost plus pharmacy pay, and a ban on spread pricing and hidden admin fees. They named the toll booths: data fees, network fees, performance fees keyed to list price. Every dollar from manufacturers flowed to the plan. Year 1, net drug spend fell 9%. Rural pharmacies survived because reimbursements finally matched invoices. Employers copied the play. A Fortune 100 manufacturer broke from a legacy PBM and hired a transparent vendor on a flat per-member fee. They killed rebates, pegged pharmacy pay to NADAC plus a dispensing fee, and published the contract to their employees. Coinsurance shifted to net. Members saw inhalers drop at the counter without coupons. Optum, Express Scripts, and CVS Caremark came back with guaranteed savings offers. The company posted the math and stayed the course. Biosimilar switching actually works when the rules are simple. After the FDA expanded interchangeable tags for insulin and anti-inflammatories, a 2025 employer coalition turned on automatic substitution at retail and specialty. Switch unless dispense as written appears with a clinical justification. They paired it with a nurse outreach script and 24/7 helpline. Adoption hit 78% in 6 months. No-show rates didn't budge. Net spend on the class fell by a third. The coalition open-sourced its playbook so rivals could copy rather than stall. States are pushing levers Washington wouldn't. Colorado and Michigan forced PBMs serving public plans into full pass-through, quarterly disclosure of all manufacturer revenue, and pharmacy pay at acquisition cost plus a transparent fee. Auditors gained real-time access to claims. When one PBM tried to rebrand spreads as data optimization, the contract clawed it back. Independent pharmacies stopped dispensing at a loss. Members noticed because prices dropped at pickup, not in a slide deck. Importation isn't a myth if you write it narrow. Florida's Section 804 program finally shipped a short list of chronic meds from Canadian wholesalers under FDA-approved protocols. The volume was modest. The savings weren't double-digit cuts versus U.S. wholesaler rates. Lawsuits narrowed the scope. The pilot kept moving. A teacher's health plan rode the program for blood pressure and cholesterol drugs and banked 7 figures they used to cut premiums $10 a paycheck. The insulin story got 2 new anchors in 2025. First, manufacturer list cuts brought some vials down to about $25 cash at retail, with federal caps extending $35 monthly limits across Medicare and expanding to more commercial plans through state mandates. Second, purchasers leaned into reference pricing. A Midwestern compact set a ceiling pegged to a European basket and told manufacturers, "Meet it or we move volume." 2 blinked. The third lost share for a year. Ambulance logs showed fewer hyperglycemia runs by spring. Then there's the nonprofit supply backstop. A health system-owned generic firm added 5 sterile injectables hospitals chronically rationed. Members signed take or pay contracts at cost plus a modest margin. When a private supplier's plant went offline, the nonprofit's pallets kept ICU sedatives flowing. No rebate checks, no performance fees, just product where it mattered. CFOs noticed that quiet saves more lives than a viral press conference. Site of care reviews, done right, cut bills without punishing patients. A large self-funded plan moved stable infusion patients from hospital outpatient to ambulatory centers with transparent fees, waiving copays for the move and funding transportation. Clinics griped about buy and bill margins. The plan offered scheduling software and chair time stipends to recover throughput. Year 1, specialty spend dropped 8 figures. The patients noticed the valet more than the bill. Cash beats coupons when contracts stop punishing it. Hospital-owned pharmacies posted cost-plus prices for high-volume generics. Plans adjusted benefits so cash claims counted toward deductibles when the plan price was higher than posted cash. Accumulators couldn't erase the savings. Members learned to ask, "What's the cash price?" And the answer finally mattered for the family, not just the employer. Enforcement finally landed where it hurts. After state audits found spread pricing in Medicaid, attorneys general clawed back hundreds of millions and barred the practice in public plans. PBMs argued aggregate guarantees. Judges asked for line items. The settlements funded rural pharmacy stabilization grants and specialty white bagging pilots that price at acquisition cost plus a fixed fee, not a percentage of a Lighthouse list. And the biggest structural shove is just starting. The FTC's 2024 suit against CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx put rebate walls, exclusion penalties, and steering under a microscope. In 2025, the first injunctions narrowed most favored clauses and banned penalties for adding biosimilars mid-contract in participating markets. Hospitals flipped to cheaper options without triggering fines. Patients didn't get a news alert. They got a lower bill. None of this is glamorous. It's procurement with a spine, contracts with clocks and claws, and data that measures what patients pay, not just what plans save. The path isn't outrage, it's replication. Post the contract. Publish the results. Invite your neighbor to copy your homework. That's how buyers unwind a maze built to confuse by stop paying for confusion. Your playbook, how not to get fleeced. Start every fill with 2 questions. What's the cash price? And does my plan use an accumulator or a maximizer? If the posted cash beats your insured copay, pay cash at an independent and keep the receipt. If your plan uses accumulators, no coupon dollars won't move your deductible. If it uses maximizers, your out-of-pocket may look low while premiums rise later. Call 2 pharmacies before you fill, an independent and a big box. Acquisition costs, MAC lists, and markups vary by zip code. Ask if there's an authorized generic for your brand. Request it by label name. If a pharmacy bulks, ask for the NDC they stock and have your prescriber match it. When the portal throws a prior auth, don't wait on hold alone. Ask your clinic for their prior auth specialist and request a peer-to-peer. Have your clinician submit an exceptions request citing failed alternatives, side effects, and guideline language. Ask for a 30-day bridge to a cheaper therapeutic cousin so adherence doesn't snap while forms bounce between CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx. Coinsurance rides the headline. Push your employer or plan to peg member cost to net, not list. If your HR team shrugs, hand them a template from a pass-through PBM contract. Acquisition cost plus pharmacy pay, no spread pricing, disclose all admin fees, and return 100% of manufacturer revenue to the plan. Tell them to demand quarterly line item reports, not savings guarantees. If you're on insulin or an anti-inflammatory, ask your prescriber to allow interchange to an FDA-designated interchangeable biosimilar. If your plan blocks it, cite the FTC's 2024 case against rebate wall tactics and ask for the plan's biosimilar exception pathway in writing. When switching sites of care, request an ambulatory infusion center quote. Ask the plan for a site of care review, copay waiver for moving, and the allowed amounts for hospital outpatient versus ambulatory. Use cash networks when they beat your benefit, but make it count. Ask your plan if cash claims can be submitted to apply to your deductible when the plan's allowed amount exceeds posted cash. If yes, upload receipts monthly. If not, ask HR to adopt a cash counts rider. Build a one-page medication log. Drug, dose, NDC, pharmacy quotes, denials, side effects, and ER visits. It turns frustration into evidence for exceptions. If your pharmacy keeps losing money on your fills, ask them which PBM underpays and move that drug to a pharmacy that can survive it. Maria on Main Street stays open when you steer volume her way. If a brand waves a coupon, run the calendar math. Ask, will this count toward my deductible? What happens when the assistance cap hits? If the answers are no and pay full freight in July, ask your prescriber for a lower net therapeutic alternative now on your terms. Last, share wins. Email HR when a biosimilar switch drops your bill. Tell your union rep when an ambulatory center cut your infusion coinsurance. Post the script language your doctor used for an exception. Procurement change spreads by imitation. Your receipt can be a blueprint. We built a marketplace that turns sickness into spreadsheets and hides the bill behind rebates, walls, and whispers. If you want the next investigation, how hospital pricing algorithms game your deductible, watch the video queued next. Subscribe so the playbooks that drain your wallet become the stories that stop them.